Hey everyone, and welcome back to another severe storm film or weather forecast. In this forecast, we have a very active weather pattern to talk about, so let's get right into it without further ado. Taking a look at the weather over the course of the next week or two, taking a look at what's happening down here in the south this afternoon. There are lots of thunderstorms blowing up across Texas, Arkansas, and southeastern Oklahoma. The main area I expect severe weather to be would be south of this low, and that would be mainly confined into eastern Texas, eventually spreading into this general area as we head in towards the overnight. So please, for the love of God, make sure you have ways of receiving alerts. The tornado threat could be atrocious with this if everything just, just lines up correctly. And as we take this into the daytime hours tomorrow, looking at a piece of energy moving off of the northwestern Pacific right now, that's going to merge with this moisture, and that's going to form a winter snowstorm for areas of the northern plains and upper Midwest, where there are already winter weather advisories and winter storm warnings and whatnot. Otherwise, we have a cold front sweeping through across the Ohio Valley and Great Lakes. Severe weather is definitely still going to be a possibility all the way up towards the Ohio Valley. Otherwise, you're just talking about a soaking rain if you live in this general area. And that could also actually, I forgot to mention, act to limit the severe threat tomorrow. So it's pretty conditional. But if something does happen, there is going to be problems down there near the Gulf up into the Ohio Valley. Taking a look at Wednesday, this is the bigger thing, all right, because we're not only going to have possibly blizzard conditions in the upper UP of Michigan into upper Wisconsin, but we're also going to have a secondary cold front coming through. This is straight out of the Arctic, folks, all right? It's not like it's going to be January cold or anything, but it's going to be bitter cold, all right? Temperatures in the 20s behind this front. It's just definitely going to be not a fun feeling. And then as we head in towards Thanksgiving, notice here as that system moves off towards the east, we're likely going to have winds on the backside of this out of the west-northwest, and that's likely going to kick up lake effect snow widespread from northern Ohio back into western and northern New York, and that's where we could have some very impressive snowfall accumulations, all right? And very impactful travel delays too. So please make sure you're staying aware if you live there. That's not the only thing though, because as we head in towards Friday, I'm watching this system closely, all right? This is probably going to be a pretty decent snowmaker in terms of intensity for areas of the northern plains back in towards the mountain terrain of Montana. But notice here how it kind of dips into the central plains as we head in towards Friday afternoon. High pressure right here is going to be bringing moisture up into the system. Watch what this does as we head in towards Saturday, all right? This is why I'm watching it. This model showing a winter storm in areas of the Midwest as we head in towards the morning hours of Saturday and continuing into the afternoon on Saturday. All right, this is less than 10 days out. This is almost less than 5 days out. So I definitely think you guys should really be watching if you live in this area right here. Some accumulating snow, possibly some very heavy snow will be a possibility. And there will be changes still, believe it or not, with the track of the low. So if it's, a bit further south, these areas will stay snow for a while, and that's going to pile up pretty quickly. But you notice here how this model kind of shoots this north. I think this has the opportunity, if this cold air high pressure systems are stronger, to shunt this down to the south and allow more of a snowstorm type system to affect these areas. All right, bottom line, it will be very impactful. There will likely still be a sleet mix on the tail end of the warm and cold air. So in front of this warm front, this is where like I said, that winter storm's going to be across the Midwest, Ohio Valley, and Great Lakes. And then down here, wouldn't be shocked if we had more strong to severe storms in the Gulf. As we take this into Sunday, that system moves out, but then we have another one to watch, all right? This is an interesting one on the modeling, all right? Because look what it does, all right? As we head in towards December 1st, obviously this can change, but this just shows how active the weather pattern can get with patterns like this, all right? Area of Arctic high pressure is going to be sitting in the upper Midwest, 1035 millibars, folks. That is impressive, and that is going to be yanking down a ton of cold air. And that tells me, since we have a high pressure system down here too, that we're going to have moisture being wrapped into this like crazy. Therefore, notice as we head in towards, the December 1st and the December 2nd time frame, this shows two separate pieces of energy right here and right here. But if we have merging, which I'm definitely why I'm watching this, because we can have merging this far out, and as we get closer, they'll merge, and they could create big systems in this general area, all right? For this, I am watching this basically entire area as we head in towards the early part of December, all right? I overcircled there. This area right into here, this is an area I'm really keeping an eye on for the possibility of maybe a secondary storm as we head in towards December 1st, December 2nd, that general time frame. And you notice as we head throughout the rest of December, the weather pattern just continues to stay active, all right? We're beyond in fantasy land at this point, but like I said before, this weather pattern is just going to continue to stay active. Winter storms like this will continue to happen if merging occurs. This is what could happen if merging occurs. And then as we head deeper into December, no signs of the weather pattern settling down anytime soon. All right, so we don't just look at one model when we're predicting winter storms only a few days out. All right, we have to look at several clustered models. And notice here as we headed towards tomorrow, all indication says there's going to be a massive winter storm across the upper Midwest, and it could cause blizzard conditions with that very strong wind. Notice here how it has bursts of snow coming in right on the backside of this front, though. The European does not have that, so this is something to keep an eye on there. There could certainly be a burst of snow. And then it has more intense lake effect snow as we head in towards Thanksgiving and Friday for a much larger area, even inland, folks, all right? The fetch is huge on this model. Look at the Lake Huron connection all the way from Lake Erie, Lake Ontario even. So that's definitely going to be something to keep an eye on. And for this system, this is the main reason why we're looking at this model. But for this system, all agrees that we're going to have a winter storm up there. And, it agrees that it's going to merge into something big as we head in towards Saturday morning, possibly some pretty heavy snow flying around and accumulating on surfaces as we head in towards that time frame. And as we head in towards, Saturday into Sunday, this is what I'm talking about. Like I said before, the high pressure systems are stronger. This could keep these areas snow for a longer period of time, and therefore, this would be a true winter storm with very high snow accumulations, all right? Don't get, too hyped up or anything, but this can definitely be one of the more major systems, so we're going to need to keep a close eye on that for some of these areas. And then as we head in towards December, it's interesting to see model consistency with this, all right? The European model actually has this piece of energy diving south too, and it's interesting that the Canadian already puts together this system 198 hours out, all right? So that is something to definitely note about. And then as we head in towards, the first few days of December, maybe little warm-ups here and there, but these fronts are likely going to stall at some point because these Arctic high-pressure systems are going to keep the cold air flowing in, and that's just going to allow for a very active storm track, including the potential for several major winter storms, ice storms, and whatnot over these areas I highlighted over the course of the next several weeks. All right, now that we're done breaking down potentially two bigger storm systems over the course of the next week or two, let's take a look now at our lake effect snow, a closer look since we're only a couple more days out. Notice here, we're likely going to see area-wide snow according to the Canadian, which I think is the right idea, across area or several scattered bursts of snow across Ohio, Indiana, and much of Michigan. Notice here this band that sets up. That's interesting on the Canadian model. And you notice as we head in towards Thanksgiving, the models have this huge band that just sits over the primary snow belts all day long from northeast Ohio, northwest PA, all the way up to northern and western New York. That is going to put down a lot of snow. And you notice how it just continues, all right? And as that system approaches from the west, that's going to probably bring a lot more impacts than just lake effect snow to a much bigger area. But, I mean, you rewind this, I mean, look at the duration of this lake effect snow, especially across this highlighted area right here. I have huge concerns for travel in this area. Let's take a look at what the snowfall accumulations could potentially look like, all right? We'll look at, how about 3-inch per hour rates, all right? So let's take a look at that, all right? Look at this. As we head in towards Thursday evening, look at that. You see the blues right there? That's 2 to 3 inches in a 3-hour time frame, and even a 6-hour time frame. Look at that, 5 to 6 plus inches near that lake shore, and you notice how that continues as we head in towards that time frame. And yeah, there comes that winter storm. So that's something to keep an eye on closely. In terms of that lake effect snow, like I said before, it's going to really rack up totals here across the Ohio Valley and Great Lakes back into the Northeast, because, I mean, right where I circled, like I said before, that's where your highest accumulations will be, according to this model. But let's take a look at the European model, all right? European model has very elevated totals across the primary and secondary snowbelts of northern Ohio, primary and secondary snowbelts of Pennsylvania, and primary and secondary snowbelts of western New York. All right, that is definitely something you don't want to mess around with, all right? And it's just in time, unfortunately, because Thanksgiving is fastly approaching, all right? And let's take a look actually at a blend of models, a better depiction there of what this could think, all right? So let's take a look at the 18Z run, all right? I'm going to leave that circle there for a while, all right? Notice here by Thanksgiving evening, this model projecting 1 to 3, maybe 4 or 5 inches across this entire area as we head in towards that time frame. And then this racks up the totals near the lake shores of Northeast Ohio back into western New York, all right, where we could see possibly measuring in feet of snow depending on how long that lake effect sits. But this is going to be a decent event, folks, and I don't want you guys to take this lightly, because, I mean, I know you guys, I know we get it up here a lot. Yes, I live in Northeast Ohio, so I know, because we get it a lot up here, but whenever it comes, it can be really impactful, folks, all right? So you definitely want to take things seriously here. All right, because notice here, even on the, the National Blend of Models version 5, as we head in towards that time frame, I mean, this all agrees that we're going to have some pretty high accumulations across the snowbelt regions of Ohio, Pennsylvania, and western New York. And even look at this, Michigan racking up the totals the day before. That's mainly going to be Wednesday. But like I said before, I have biggest concerns for this band right here. All right, right along the Cleveland area, Erie, Pennsylvania, back up into the Buffalo region. That is really going to lay it down in terms of snowfall accumulation. And if you take a look actually at our wind gust map, as we rewind this here, notice here, widespread gusts, 30, 40, even 50 miles an hour. That is going to just cause a really bad time frame where we have a lot of traveling going on, and that's going to cause blowing snow across this area, folks. All right, so blowing snow, and I mean, the visibility is going to be really bad. All right, snow and wind do not go together very well, so visibility is going to be very low. So driving, not recommended if you live in the secondary and primary snow belts of this region right here, all right? This general thin, shaded out region right there. And even then, you'll still have widespread gusts, 30, 40, even 50 miles an hour. In the inland areas, no matter if you get a lake effect snow band, it's still going to be very windy across those areas as we head in towards Thanksgiving and Friday. All right, now that we're done taking a look at the intense lake effect snow potential that will likely disrupt several plans on Thanksgiving and Black Friday, let's take a look at this wintry mess of a storm that's going to set up over the northern plains and upper Midwest, basically this entire area as we head in towards the next few days. So let's put this into motion here as we take this in towards the overnight tonight around 2 or 3 a.m. Central. We are likely going to be watching for this area of what's going to be very heavy snow and blowing snow at that, because the winds are going to be very strong. Could have blizzard conditions or like blizzard conditions for much of these areas. So you might be woken up by that wind as that moves in. Look at this, folks. As we head in towards late tomorrow morning, though, we have just a very impressive look here, all right? Look at this. This is a very impressive winter storm, folks, all right? This is going to be nothing to mess around with if you live in North Dakota, Minnesota, or northern South Dakota as we headed towards late tomorrow morning, all right? There's also going to be significant severe weather potentially going on down here across the Gulf. So there's a lot going on, all right? What that's going to do, though, is that this piece of energy right here is going to begin to throw moisture into this. This is why the worst of the storm probably comes as we head in towards Wednesday morning, and that is going to be for friends across eastern Minnesota, northern and western Wisconsin, back into the upper part of Michigan, where I have no doubt we will see blizzard conditions out of this. All right, because look at this. This sits over these same areas as we head in towards the latter half of Wednesday afternoon. All right, there's probably going to be a decent good bit of bursting of snow happening in Ohio, but look at this. This is just widespread snow across this entire area from southwest Michigan all the way into the upper part of Michigan. All right, so winter storm bonanza going on in this general area for sure. Let's take a look at what those potential snowfall accumulations could look like, all right? As we take this out into the early morning hours of tomorrow, all right? Look at this. Already, as we head in towards early tomorrow afternoon, already going to have upwards of 5 to 6 inches in spots and widespread 1 to 3 inches. But as this continues to move off towards the east and combines with that second burst of energy, this is going to be what we see, all right? Perhaps a stripe of what's going to be feet of snow. That's going to be definitely something to keep an eye on here, all right? Up over here, I mean at least 6 to 8 inches. And then over here in the UP of Michigan and whatnot, we could get into 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, maybe even 15 plus inches of snow, which would mean measuring in feet if you live over there. And then the snow would likely start accumulating here in western Michigan too. But the worst of the winter storm, like I said before, is going to be in this area right here, where we have the highest drifting of snow rate possible and a lot of blowing snow. All right, blowing snow is going to be an issue. Actually, blowing snow is going to be an issue across this entire area here. All right, behind this cold front, which is going to blast east as we head in towards Wednesday morning and afternoon, is going to have lots of gusty winds with it, and any bursts of snow. Yeah, that's going to cause big problems. All right, but out over here, I would not be shocked if it's ground zero blizzard conditions as we head in towards Wednesday. I'm just going to say that right now. And taking a look at those wind gusts, yeah, they're pretty impressive. All right, you notice as we head in towards the morning hours of tomorrow, notice here gusts to 60 in South Dakota. That is significant. And if you take a look at sustained winds, yes, this is blizzard criteria. All right, I have no doubt we could have blizzard conditions, blizzard-like conditions going on there for more than 3 hours at a time. And you notice as we take this out in time, the HRRR wants a pocket of 70 mile per hour wind gusts here in southern South Dakota, southern South Dakota, northern Nebraska. And as this pushes off towards the east, the winds will still remain super blustery, folks, all right? And I mean super blustery across this entire area. Minnesota, Iowa, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, Michigan, Pennsylvania, all the way back into Canada is going to have at least 30 mile per hour wind gusts And where those blizzard conditions are going on, these gusts are going to be exceeding 45 miles an hour, folks, all right? So this is nothing to take lightly if you live in the areas I just circled. And taking a look now at our severe weather threat across the deep south tonight and tomorrow. As we put this into motion, notice here all the thunderstorms going on here as we headed towards this evening and tonight across the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex area, all the way back down to perhaps the Corpus Christi area where all hazards of severe weather will be possible. The tornado threat really gets going, though, as we head in towards overnight, I feel like, especially across southeast Texas and western Louisiana. This is the area where I think we could have the greatest tornado risk. And then we take it into the daytime hours tomorrow. Wouldn't rule out some more severe weather sporadically, because you notice here the clearing breaking in the clouds there. The white is the clouds, the blue is clearing. And you notice as we head in towards tomorrow evening and overnight, probably another risk of severe weather all the way down here across Georgia, Alabama, and maybe even the Florida Panhandle. So that's definitely something to really keep an eye on. Let's take a look at our ingredients for severe weather. All right, what ingredients we need? We need instability, we need moisture, we need shear, and we need a trigger. All right, we have all that. All right, let's take a look here at your surface-based energy. Notice along that front as we head in towards the overnight, we're going to be looking at a low cape high shear. All right, this is only about 1,500 joules per kilogram, maybe not even getting above 500 over here across central and northern Mississippi. I still think we will have some severe weather potential with that. With the low cape high shear environment. And you notice as we head in towards tomorrow, another low cape high shear environment, severe threat possible across that area. And then as we take it in towards Wednesday, maybe another one as we head in towards the North Carolina vicinity and South Carolina vicinity as that front continues to push off towards the south. All right, let's take a look here at our shear. What does our shear look like? It is pretty strong. All right, you overlap that with your instability here. Yeah, you're going to have a heck of a ride there across areas of Louisiana and Mississippi. And I feel like your greatest tornado threat waking up tomorrow morning will be across this corridor right here. New Orleans, Jackson, Mississippi, that general area right there. And then as we take this out into time into tomorrow afternoon, the wind shear is still going to be very much there. All right, the line of thunderstorms will likely get going here. There's probably going to be upwards of 40 to 50 knots of shear. That is plenty of shear to get things going this time of year. And then as we take it out into Wednesday, like I said before, maybe another low cape high shear environment. There is a lot of shear around here as we head in towards Wednesday, though. That is something to keep an eye on for the deep south. For now, the Storm Prediction Center just has a general thunder for that area, but I definitely think we should keep an eye on that as we head in towards Wednesday, as the tornado risk could be a bit more elevated in nature. All right, let's take a look at the countrywide temperature outlook over the course of the next 7 to 10 plus days. All right, as we take this into the daytime hours tomorrow for your Tuesday, temperatures will be soaring across the central and eastern United States, with temperatures well above their averages. On the backside of a cold front, though, there's that first blast of cold air that's going to be responsible for the winter storm across the upper Midwest and lower Great Lakes. And then here comes a cold front as we head in towards Wednesday. Those above average temperatures you can say bye-bye to, as this cold front ushers in Arctic air for the northern and central United States. This is going to be in the order of 10 to 20 degrees below average in some areas. And on Thanksgiving, we're talking about bitter cold conditions across this entire area. Well, not really probably down here in the southeast, but you get what I mean. Well below average temperatures. Probably actual bitter cold across this area right here, all right? I have to say that at the least. It'll definitely be very cold across those areas. And then as we head in towards Black Friday, oh my gosh, guys, I'm getting chills just thinking about it, all right? It's going to be bitter cold again across this area. Much colder than Thanksgiving, all right? I mean, we're talking about 15 to 20 degree below average temperatures. Look at that, 25 across those those mountain areas right there below average. All right, now as we head in towards the last few days of November, this model likes to put in a brief warm-up because we have the southeast ridge down here. A couple days ago, this had a blowtorch across the eastern United States for the first couple days of December. Not anymore, all right? The cold air looks to be very, very strong, so much so it'll push the warmer all the way down to the southern United States. This is a very impressive cold look as we head in towards early December. I have to say, this would be dangerous cold across much of this area, all right? I mean, we would have wind chills below 0 if this is the case, all right? And you notice here how that just continues coming in like a lion as we head throughout December. And I mean, this is only the first week of December, folks, all right? Just think of what the third and even fourth week of December could look like, all right? So let's take a look here at what some weeklies say, all right? Just for fun, all right? As we take this out into time, as we take this here, notice here how it shows warmer conditions building across the southeastern United States. It's probably that southeast ridge. And then as we head in towards the end of December, all the way from start to finish, bitter cold across this entire area, all right? Or at least signs of it. And then as we head in towards January, yeah, we don't talk about that green already showing up there, all right? January looks very cold right now. I'm not trying to do a monthly forecast right now or anything, but I'm just telling you, the weather pattern just looks ridiculously cold for some as we head in towards December and January. Here's your convective outlook from Storm Prediction Center to end this video, all right? Here's the day one. Obviously, like I said before, the areas we were hinting at, this entire area right in here. As we take it into the daytime hours tomorrow, we're likely going to have another day of severe weather. I could see this slight risk be expanded a bit further to the west, maybe a bit towards the east, and then as we head in towards Wednesday, like I said before, Storm Prediction Center does not have anything, though I would not be shocked if they added a little marginal risk in here, maybe for wind and tornadic activity. All right, folks, I'm Severe Storm Filmer. Hope you guys, as always, like and subscribe. Have a great rest of your night. Stay safe out there.